Thank you for taking the time to do this. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning more about digital credentials. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to dive into our list of questions for today. Can you tell me what are micro credentials and how do digital credentials support the issuing of micro credentials?
Interesting question. I think it's talk of town these days, but micro credentials as such, just to be very clear, is not the certificate, which could be a misconception somewhere. So the micro credentials is the actual the program, the actual training, and a micro credential would have consist of, at least in Europe, is test points. So it could be broken down. If you look at it, it could be a full, bachelor degree broken into smaller programs, and you could do a micro credential that would be 5 East test points, have a learning criteria, a learning outcome, and there would have to be an assessment for it to qualify as a micro credential. And then what a digital credential setup can do is it can support this delivery of training with digital credentials that are easily distributed to the students after completion, and micro-credentials can be part of a learning pathway, so you can easily show the student the next step of that learning journey. We have created a setup where you can do dynamic learning paths, so maybe when you've done step 1 and step 2 of a certain journey, then that could be the foundation for 2 pathways. So now you know the basic stuff of marketing maybe, and then based on that you can now take 2 journeys instead of just one pathway. One other pathway suddenly opened up because of your level of knowledge. So it's a way to nudge learning. And if you look at micro credentials as such, it's a great way to help reskill and upskill our workforce, because all of us above 40, we have a lot of us have, not everybody, but some have kids and cars and houses and jobs, and so doing a full degree, going back to school and do a new bachelor's degree within whatever, AI, we simply wouldn't have the time for that. So micro credentials play a vital role in our ability to upskill and reskill for the future. And digital credentials can support us on that learning journey going forward.
It's such an interesting space. I wish I had a crystal ball and could see what it's all going to look like in 10 years' time.
Yeah, who knows? It's definitely 5 years ago, 6 years ago, what is it now, 7 years ago when we started, when someone we said, so we do digital credentials. You do what? So I'm like, what is that? No, I don't know what it is. But now everybody knows what it is, right? So all these, just in 7 years, it's become a huge thing within the education sector.
Kim, can you tell me, how can organizations balance the need for data privacy with accessibility of digital credentials in compliance with the GDPR standards?
If you look at how GDPR basically works, it's about empowering, I think, the user, like to have the user take control, providing the user with tools that can put them in control of their own data. And GDPR is also a lot about minimizing data sharing. So if you have tools where you can enable users to only share what is absolutely necessary, so you have this full accessibility, but you only share what is absolutely, required. And that could be for digital credentials. That could be in terms of, you see a transcript. If you have that as a paper or PDF version, you cannot choose what to share. You share the whole thing. If you don't want to share something, you might have to cross it over with a black marker or whatever. But in a digital world, you can apply measures to have like partial disclosure. So you only disclose relevant information for a certain position or a certain job in a certain recruitment situation, or when applying to a university somewhere where only certain grades are needed to share. Maybe you got an A in mathematics, but you didn't get an A in data empowerment or whatever course you participated in. So having this way of still keeping things super transparent, but still giving the ownership to the user, and they have full control of their data. That could be one way of looking at, balancing those two. Our background in working with the digital identities, the Danish national identity scheme, really transpires into how we've also built the platform. So having this extra layer of knowledge within how to handle digital identities also transparent into how we handle data on the platform, how we secure data, how we store data, how people can access data, how they can share data. And sometimes this is under the hood, so it's not something you can actually see on top of, when you issue a credential, but the data behind it has all these, things applied to it. So that's super important, and especially for higher ed, where, student data, securing student data is very important. You don't want, data being transferred to third-party countries, or, someone requesting to access data that they're not allowed to view under the data protection regulation. So yes, it's super important.
Okay, cool. So my next question is, what measures are in place to ensure the seamless transfer and recognition of digital credentials across borders within Europe?
There's a few standards in place to secure this transfer of data and also recognition of data. I think the latest project to help us safeguard and trust our digital identity is the EPSI project, the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure project, that more or less will act as this overall ledger, overall trust model for our identities. And if you share credentials via this network, then it's legitimate and it's trusted, and you can trust whoever has, who is sharing it. You can trust that the organization who have issued this credential to the person can be trusted because they have been greenlisted to do so, and the individual showcasing it, you can trust that individual because this is a legally binding document issued to an individual in that, geography or in that country. So there's this high level of trust using EPSI as a way of recognizing and transferring this data between European countries or European organizations. But there's a huge, I think one of the most important part is that we standardize. There should be a high level of standardization as part of this movement. Everybody probably thinks they're very unique, and I think everybody is unique in their own sense, but that doesn't mean we cannot standardize on certain areas and make life a lot easier when it comes to transferring data. So there's a lot of talks about interoperability, transparency, but that's only great if we all understand, if everybody has the same understanding of what we're looking at, that's the same. So I think EPSI is definitely one of the things that's going to make this seamless transfer and recognition a lot easier.
Do you have a lot of cross collaboration within your industry with trying to standardize these processes?
We work in Denmark, we work with, for instance, the Accreditation Institute. That's one. We also work with the Ministry of Digitization, both in relation to the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure and how that can be governed. But it's also in Europe, there's also a few frameworks in place, like the European Qualification Framework is one of those frameworks trying to They have created a framework of 8 steps, whereas when you deliver certificates could add a level of like whatever learning or whatever skill or competence that you have is on a certain level within this qualification framework. And so that's one way to make it more transparent and operable, so we can all understand exactly what level you're on if we have applied this level on top of our qualifications. So when you finish a program or a course, yes, maybe you got a grade, and it also has some earning criteria, maybe some skills related, but that would fit into one of these 8 qualification steps on the qualification framework. So being able to use something like that could enhance this cross-border recognition and understanding of that we're looking at the same thing.
Okay. I think you just answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it again anyway, so you can explain it to me again, is in what ways can digital credentials be aligned with the EQF to improve recognition and comparability across different countries?
Incorporation of EQF level information within the digital credentials would make it easier for our institutions and employees across Europe to understand and also compare the qualifications. So that is basically what could be put in place, so that if everyone issuing credentials in Europe agreed to add this indication, the EQF level, to their credentials, then we would all know what we're looking at. So this description of learning outcomes and skills put into one of these EQF levels could certainly provide a more transparent way of understanding skills and competences.
I want to come back to EPSI. So I want to understand, how does the use of blockchain technology, specifically EPSI, contribute to ensuring the security and authenticity of credentials? Like, how does it work?
In very plainly, it works as if you are issued a credential, then you have it in a certain format, the EPSI format. And that format is recognized in Europe as a legal format, and it is seen as I think you would say, an immutable record. So therefore, blockchain kind of creates this layer of it's tamper proof and it's unbreakable in the sense, and it increases integrity and so forth. So that's kind of what the blockchain does. So when you share this with your network or an employer, then they would recognize this as an immutable and very credible record according to your skill or competence or whatever it is that you're having verified. Okay. The blockchain as such, it's like a decentralized network, right? So that means that we are 100,000 or a million verifiers of that credential. So that is also part of, if you look at it, it's not just one person recognizing this credential. It's a lot of the decentralized network is basically a lot of people saying, yes, this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. So there's a lot of verifiers on this blockchain acknowledging that this is a record that is accurate, that it is valid, and that it is related to the specific person and so forth. So that is one of the strong parts of that. Is not just one entity or one organization recognizing the specific record, the credential in this sense. So therefore, EPSI, we think here that EPSI is going to be the prevailing standard for a lot of digital assets, not only learning credentials, but also other types of credentials supporting your identity, because it has this cross-border recognition layer. It enforces on the European skills agenda. One of the things that is talked about is mobility and transparency, and EPSI certainly speaks into those layers. And so I think, we definitely think EPSI is one of the prevailing standards to support our digital identity.
Do you ever find that they are like apprehensive about the use of blockchain technology in compliance?
Yeah, I think if you look at the landscape of education providers, then if you are a public institution working with blockchain and in that sense paying with cryptocurrency, it can be an issue. So working with a blockchain where you have to pay with bitcoins, that would mean you in some sense would have to have a Bitcoin account. If you have to handle that, you might need to go through a money laundering program to actually be allowed to, and so forth. So we actually handle that on behalf of a lot of our customers here. So we are paying on their behalf. So we have been through this white money launderer procurement process and so forth, and allowed to do that. So we can handle that, but it can still be an issue that they don't want to be associated with something like cryptocurrencies, because there's so much still going on in this space and nobody really knows where it's going to land. So EPSI, on the other hand, is a different model. It's not based on a payment with cryptocurrency for transactions. You don't pay a Bitcoin to add your credentials to that blockchain. So it's based on a trust model rather than a payment model. So therefore, that specific blockchain is seen to support also the public part, especially all the universities and governmental organizations issuing different, credentials like driver's license, social security cards, learning credentials, all those official credentials supporting our identity. But EPSI is still really new. It's still being piloted, so it's not nothing is set in stone. It is still we're doing a lot of piloting, and it seems like this could be a way forward. But it's also about adoptability. So if nobody is adopting it, why should you as an institution issue with this specific technology? That wouldn't make any sense if nobody cares about it or if it's not being adopted. But it looks like there's a huge adoption around that is still being piloted. So there's a lot of unanswered questions still related to this European blockchain.
How long has EPSI been piloted for?
The first versions of EPSI was piloted maybe, 3 years ago. There was a case, with the university in France. And now there's some use cases on learning credentials and social security cards. And we are part of the diploma use case right now, started here in January and running the next 2 years. Pilot this specific variation, and other projects will arise over the next, this year and the next, to pilot other types of credentials using this technology. So I think we are looking into, quite a few years before we have something that's operational and running and adopted.
Okay, we're going to move away from talking about compliance and kind of talk a little bit into like the education industry. So what I want to know is, how do digital credentials facilitate continuous learning or continuous education and skill development, particularly in the context of lifelong learning?
If we look at the concept lifelong learning, that really means you're learning lifelong. Like, so it's not you don't do one course. Like next year and next month, you also do a program or a course. You keep on developing, because now with AI, we need to jump on a lot of courses and to understand how that can help us in our business, even our daily life, and how it can help us do things faster, more efficient, but still, with a sense of, we cannot let the AI take over everything. We still need the human touch. So this is what we're learning now, and soon there'll be other things we need to learn. So we need to make sure that we are relevant, in daily life and in our on the job. We need to, adapt new skills and new competencies to make sure that we are relevant. And digital credentials support this in a way, because a piece of paper or a PDF, yes, you can read what competence is there, but it's not digital. And with a set of digital credentials that has skills as part of it, then you can start stacking your skills together, and you can, see what top skills you have and where you have skills that apply for certain positions. Maybe you can look into, now I have X amount of skills in a certain direction that could actually make me, if I do this next course, that would take me to level within the skills. Maybe in the future, we can stack skills together and create our own degrees. Who knows? So digital credentials are simply a way of supporting lifelong learning. So because you can kind of stack together those skills along the way, so you'll have a much better idea about where could I potentially go. And I think with AI could help you read, understand, and translate your skills into what could be the next most relevant program, or course, or learning training for you based on your aspirations. So when having it as data, something that's verifiable, then AI on top of that could actually help us, with the right steps according to where we want to go, or what we want to be, or what we want to learn, or what job we have to carry out in the future. So I think digital credentials are certainly a way to support, the continuous of learning.
It's so true. I mean, the education landscape is just changing so fast. I mean, I've got young kids, and I have absolutely no idea what it's going to look like in 10 years' time or 15 years' time when they have to go to varsity. Will they even go to varsity?
Yeah. My oldest just turned 13, so the full-blown teenager, right? So it's just they just do things so differently than when I was 13, right? They do so many things that are just easy for them. They just, related to whatever, a computer can do. They can work it they work it different than I do. So the use of all these tools are definitely going to change, learning. But I think that's also why micro credentials is now in talk of town. Why should I do a bachelor's degree in, marketing? Why don't I just do a micro credential course in digital marketing? Yeah, I don't need the rest, right? I just want to know how, because I'm going to do a business, an online business. I just need to know how to acquire customers and brand myself. That's the two things I need to know. And if I need to know the rest, then I'll, jump on that course when it's needed, because right now I don't need it. So I think this way of having all these learning options right at hand when you need them just makes a lot of sense. So then you can do 2 hours a week or 2 hours a day in a certain period, and then you attain the knowledge to actually, do whatever it is that you need to do for that specific role or that specific project that you're doing.
I got my marketing degree about 12 years ago, and nothing that I learned in that degree do I put into practice today. And it's really a conscious effort to stay on top of the industry, staying on top of platforms and getting certified through Meta or through LinkedIn, that's, so I definitely see how micro-credentials are shaping the future of lifelong learning. So I just wanted to ask you, in what ways do digital badges and micro-credentials offer a more detailed representation of someone's skills and achievements in comparison to, say, like a traditional degree?
Well, first of all, I think there's the specification of skills. So I guess on your marketing degree, it said that you got maybe an A or a B or probably an A in the different courses you attended. Probably came a diploma supplement and a description, and there was probably a wall diploma, so you could put it on the wall behind you, and a signature to verify, and a stamp and so forth. With digital badges or micro credentials or digital, I would say digital credentials, they can be issued on specific skills using a skills library that can be machine read, and as we said before, those skills can then be stacked. So you can put together programs. So as an education provider, you would build your programs in modular learning tracks, offering courses based on, different skills you can attain within certain areas. So you can stack skills for your learners and students, and they would then, do those trainings, but you can also show them, the path of what they could end up with if they continue learning. So you can show them, now you've done step 1 of 3, or now you know about how to do paid advertising, but now you need to know about organic, growth. So you can stack those skills as you go along. Digital credentials can, in that sense, act as building blocks for your skill levels and your competencies, and that's a huge difference compared to a normal set of credentials, a degree, for instance. Also, looking at it from a perspective of, if you look at how the tendency is right now, then we're looking into an era of skills-based hiring, and we're doing that because a workforce with updated skills. So that's why you need to do your LinkedIn course, and that's why you need to do your meta training. And so right now you're not being hired for B2B because of your marketing degree. You're being hired because you have these skills, and but also, of course, you have experience, right? So you have experience combined with your upgrading of skills. So there's a lot of reskilling and upskilling going on because things are moving so fast. So it's great to rely on your degree, but you need to have credentials supporting you lifelong, and digital credentials can do that. So with digital credentials and skills as part of that, so using a skills library, supporting the knowledge that you have obtained and the earning criteria that was part of this program, also makes it a lot easier for recruiters to recruit the right people for the job. It's also helping to make a less biased hiring process. So you don't need people who has an Ivy League degree. You need people with the right skills. So there's a few American companies that have now turned into skills-based hiring only, and it's not considering a 10-year-old degree worth anything. Basically, they're looking at the skill sets of the employees they hire and simply assess those skills to make sure that they get the right people for the right job. So which I think there's a tendency we'll see transpire globally.
I agree. Yeah, we definitely are noticing a shift from people not looking for degrees, looking more for skills-based, on-the-job experience and micro credentials. I'm glad you spoke about hiring, because I kind of wanted to take the conversation now towards hiring and recruitment. And my next question was, how do digital credentials influence job market dynamics and create opportunities for employability in a European context?
Well, as you said before, digital credentials can help build more granular learning pathways. So it's basically a way to support continued learning and a way to showcase your growth and your current skill level, and also a way to easily assess where the gap is depending on where you want to be. And I think if we look at hospitality, for instance, a lot of people left hospitality sector during COVID due to, hotels didn't have any guests and amusement park there was no rides open and, all that. So of course that sector was heavily hit during COVID, and a lot of people left the sector and not all of them came back. So they're right now looking into how can we reskill and upskill this workforce, and how can we do that in a way that motivates them to stay with us in this specific sector. So right there, we are part of a European project focusing specifically on creating learning paths, skills-based training, and a way to have employees showcase an up-to-date skill representation, but also this assessment of the gap, so we can easily figure out, how can you go from here to here by, doing, 1 or 2 or 3 courses, depending on your aspirations. Also, it's a great way for employers to sit down with employees and talk about where they are and where they want to be, and quickly assess, okay, if you want to do that, then you can do this, and this, and with your actual level of work experience, which is also a skill that can be applied. Part of it, so it's not only training patient, but also experience in a certain position that could give you skills that can be stacked together with your other, educational skills that you achieved. So I think this is certainly something that's helping that agenda along.
I'd like to kind of break that down a little bit more about how the digital credentials are actually being matched with like current and future requirements within an industry. So like how industries are evolving and changing, and how do digital credentials, or how are hiring managers and the leadership teams, how do they match current and future job requirements to align with the industry's needs?
Today, there's still no, other than LinkedIn, probably a global tool for looking at skills. LinkedIn is definitely a great place to go to look up skills of an individual. The thing about those skills is that they are mostly self-applied, so I can basically add any skill on my profile that I want. And then my network can say, yes, Kim is good at writing or communicating or strategic leadership or whatever, but it hasn't been assessed by anyone. So it's basically a claim without, validity other than the proof of my network saying, yes, it's great, Kim. Kim is my best friend. He's a really great leader. So there's still no global tool for this, but that is where the digital credentials setup actually plays a vital role for recruiters and employers to actually assess whether or not do I actually have the skills I claim. And if you go, I think we spoke to a recruitment agency just recently, and I think according to their data, 25% of all LinkedIn profiles have some kind of, I wouldn't say they're fake, but maybe they were a project assistant, but on their resume it says project manager. Right. And so it's just a little, they're not lying. It's just, not telling the full story necessarily. So if you were a project manager, then you would have a totally different skill level than a project assistant, because it's not so much about only doing parts of the project. It's also managing the project also from an economical perspective, managing people, managing. So it's a totally different skill level. So being able to assess that with a set of digital credentials, saying, okay, we can see that you have, based on both your experience, but also your education profile, you have assessed and qualified skills that brings you to this specific level. That would enable them to hire that person, even though they didn't have the qualification. They could see that, okay, if we think this is a good fit for our organization on a culture level, they actually show the willingness to learn. And they lack only, a few competencies to actually reach this level. So we can teach them that, or we'll make sure that they can join those courses down the road, and then we can help them grow.
So the next question I have for you, it's actually my final question, is one of my favorite topics to talk about is how does all of this, everything we've spoken about, contribute to reducing biases in hiring and fostering fairness in the hiring and recruitment process?
One of the things with digital credentials, and especially having skills-based hiring as part of a process, is that you are not so concerned with background or the gender. Or I think if you look to the US, there's a lot of people who did not go to an Ivy League university, or even did go to university at all, but they still have, tons of skills they can apply in so many different sectors. I was just speaking to a company the other day who does skills assessment, and what they're looking into is how can we transfer skills from different sectors, and what are the significant traits of people from different sectors. So if you look at retail and healthcare, like specific people within healthcare, all the warm hands in healthcare. And if you compare that to the traits of people in retail, then they both have a high level of empathy. They have a high, service level. So they could actually, people from healthcare could actually also work and the other way around, they can also work in healthcare, right? So how can we make sure to reskill and upskill different types of workforces to actually make sure we have enough hands available for certain sectors in the future. So just looking at, back then it was referred to hard skills and soft skills, but it's a lot about behavioral skills. So how can we make sure that we simply just cross-reference people for different from various sectors that could fit into new sectors or sectors where we lack people. That's also a way of looking at it. They were looking at some key behavioral traits across different industries, and basically said, well, I know that this guy's a physician, but his behavioral skills translate into these three main areas that are the same three things that this person over in this industry actually. So those two things compare so well that if we just upskill this person on what we would call hard skills, then they would fit into this role perfectly. So, and therefore micro credentials and supported with a digital credential setup makes so much sense, because then you can start building that while being in retail. You can start building those skills to transpire into another sector where your skills is where your hands are definitely in high demand, and maybe retail will soon be only robots. Who knows? Or ABS shopping malls with.
I've always said that my hairdresser could be a therapist. So.
But there you go.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense actually. Yeah, that's true.